You, Ceann Comhairle. Ceann Comhairle, this is my umpteenth time to bring up on the floor of this House, both to ministers and to the Taoiseach, the neglect of Rosslare Europort with regard to any financial input from the government or previous governments for my 30 years in haulage and my 17 months in this House. Yet, all parties agree in this House that Rosslare Europort is Ireland's most strategic port. All parties agree that Rosslare Europort is and has been neglected and is in dire need of investment. All parties agree that Rosslare Europort has seen a 400% increase in traffic since the inception of Brexit, taking Ireland's valuable imports and exports to and from EU mainland, and not one penny has been provided by government to assist. In the teeth of a housing crisis, Ceann Comhairle, with the cost of building materials being imported rising by the minute, it makes perfect sense that they would arrive at the closest point on this island, and that is Rosslare Europort. For hauliers, the very serious lack of drivers is causing huge problems and will ultimately end up in Ireland not being able to compete on a European and world stage. I'd ask that be considered in relation to the direct mainland routes that are viable because Rosslare Europort has garnered them. We have spent the taxpayers' money making it the most accessible port in the country. Government intends spending £500 million of taxpayers' money on a planned upgrade to complete the M11 from Islegate to Rosslare. But why? From the day I set foot in this House, I've spoken about the need for joined-up thinking when spending taxpayers' money, to give the taxpayer absolute value for money. Ceann Comhairle, if we are to spend and have spent £500 million bypassing New Ross and Enniscorthy, and intend spending £500 million completing the M11, then surely the government cannot deny that to give away or to award a wind farm construction-based project anywhere else but Rosslare will be a waste of taxpayers' money. Given that giving the taxpayer value for money is what we're elected to do, giving double bang for their buck is a common-sense approach from government. 30 years ago, Ceann Comhairle, entrepreneur Liam Griffin had the foresight to go to government and ask for investment in Rosslare Europort, outlining its potential then, but they didn't listen. And are they listening now? Upgrading Rosslare Europort is in the country's best interest. It's the common sense, economic sense and value for money approach people want to see from government. Ceann Comhairle, I want to ask the Taoiseach, does he have that common sense, and when will monies be invested in Rosslare in the country's best interest?
Taoiseach.
First of all, I thank Deputy Murphy for raising this issue in respect of Rosslare, and I want to say that I hope we do have that common sense in terms of the
I do.
well, I'm not sure who could have as much common sense as you, Verona, or Deputy Murphy. But to make the point that we do, obviously in the context of Brexit, I think Rosslare, the importance of Rosslare was very evident, and in fact has given us capacity and flexibility to deal with the Brexit situation. The other area I think is the potential for offshore wind and the development of port facilities to facilitate renewable energy offshore. And that's something now that we've developed the National Maritime Planning Framework and the Maritime Area Planning Bill 2021, that really gives a strong signal to investors out there, because the government policy now is saying there's one proper streamlined planning process for offshore wind. I think that creates opportunities in terms of Rosslare and indeed other ports, but I think Rosslare is well placed on the East Coast in that respect. And the Minister Ryan is making a lot of progress on the offshore electricity transmission system, on the renewable electricity support scheme. And so we're looking at developments there also in the context of Rosslare Port. Rosslare has responded very well to Brexit, as I've said, and indeed to the impacts of COVID-19 as well. The shipping operators have demonstrated their capacity to respond quickly and move capacity to where it has been sought by businesses both in Ireland, the United Kingdom and on the continent. And due to Brexit, Rosslare Port has seen the largest growth of any port in the number of direct European services, with sailings increasing from 3 a week to 14 return journeys. That's 28 weekly. Now, Éireann and Rosslare Europort's strategic development plans for the port includes investment plans for €42 million in customer facilities, port infrastructure, freight facilities, port assets, new technology, and linking the new entrance of the port with the proposed new port access road. Clearance works commenced in late 2020. They're scheduled to last over a number of years in a number of phases, and Rosslare is reporting that these works are well underway. I've already instanced the offshore renewable energy development. The Department of Transport met with Éireann and Rosslare Europort on the 1st of July to explore the potential for European Union funding for the port under the European Union's Connecting Europe facility, including for offshore wind energy facilities. First call for applications under the CEF is expected in September of 2021. There's potential for up to 50% of eligible costs for studies, up to 30% of infrastructure work costs. So Éireann and Rosslare Port are looking at the funding opportunities now under the Connecting Europe facility. It's their intention to apply for that in September for eligible works and studies, and government will be supporting them in that regard. And the Irish Maritime Development Office
time is up.
Is carrying out consultations with the renewable sector. A lot of interest now in this space. I'll come back to the Deputy in my supplementary.
Thank you, Taoiseach. Thank you, Ceann Comhairle. Taoiseach, I understand you may hope to have the common sense, but I think you have to take on board what's at stake here for the country. This is a port that is now regarded as probably the most strategic port, not just in Ireland, but actually from the UK as well. We're servicing Northern Ireland, we've kept them in the single market, they're accessing this port. The port has never received a shilling over 40 years from any government, including this government. I accept, and I spoke with Glenn Carr, the manager for Rosslare. He did tell me that there was a meeting, but that meeting is only to say that we're looking at funding that can be accessed from a European fund. Everything is too slow. In March of this year, Minister Hildegard Naughton told me that there was a process going to be set up to outline where submissions would go in relation to wind farm projects and wind farm construction-based projects. Nothing has happened on that front. We don't have time. But I want to reiterate that the taxpayer must and should get value for money, and we can give double bang for the buck to the taxpayer by investing in Rosslare and not making it subject to competition.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ceann Comhairle.
First of all, I would make the point that that meeting is an important meeting because I think it can open the door, create a pathway for an application for significant funding, which would be backed by the state in respect of the Connecting Europe funding facility. The Department of Transport has been in touch with the EU Commission, negotiating changes to it in terms of the criteria to allow EU funding for basic port infrastructure towards improving connectivity, and also for funding of port infrastructure for offshore wind energy in the next 2021-2023 CEF programme. So that will be adopted this month, the programme, and then that will allow ports, including Rosslare Europort, to apply for CEF funding. But we're very conscious, as I said earlier, of the potential of Rosslare, and some investments happen because of Brexit, as you know, in terms of infrastructure. But in terms of I think the key is both in terms of the post-Brexit scenario, I think has been positive for Rosslare.
Thank you, Taoiseach.
I think the offshore wind issue presents significant potential.
Deputy Michael McNamara.